Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. Now in Deuteronomy 8, it makes it clear that God had them in the wilderness to test them to see if they would obey God in the story. These are characters in the story because this is a formula that they're communicating to you through the story. That's why there's all these parables in the New Testament. They're formulas to communicate to you a message. Okay, we see that in Proverbs 17:2, where it makes it crystal clear that the Jews are not chosen. Okay, why? Because it says a prudent servant will rule over a disgraceful son and share the inheritance of one of the family. So therefore, those who are the most prudent, right, those who keep the martial arts / life principles, monotheistic martial art principles, the most are elevated over those who didn't keep them as well or didn't keep them at all. It's very straightforward. Okay. It is disgraceful for somebody to be given the upper hand, to be given the commands of God, and to have had an opportunity to cultivate them before everyone else, and then to be surpassed by someone else. But it's infinitely more disgrace for them to sabotage people and to prevent God's plan, to the best of their ability, mind you, from coming into fruition. Thus, when we see the scriptures themselves are the wilderness. The scriptures themselves are a form of the wilderness, rather. The scriptures themselves are you wandering through the wilderness. Why? Because when you read Deuteronomy, for example, or you read Proverbs, okay, these are riddles, parables, sayings of the wise. So you're kind of saying, what's going on here? Like the Jews in the story in the wilderness. What's going on? Now, if you have a good heart, it says it's testing their heart, right? The Lord weighs the heart. Proverbs weighs the motives. If your motives are pure and your heart is pure, you're not going to put your flesh first. You're not going to say, well, I'm Mexican or I'm black, so we're the real Jews. Or you're not going to be like, well, I'm a white, quote unquote, Jew, so we're the real Jews. You're going to look at things in terms of somebody's worth, in terms of moral character. Whether their hearts are circumcised, whether they're pure, and you're going to reward people according to their deeds. God's Spirit rewards people according to their deeds. A righteous woman doesn't date a wicked person because of her emotions being attracted to him. No, she dates a righteous person. And she looks at it and says, does this all line up? Is this person just pretending to be righteous? And he's sabotaging people like, eugenics was about, Eugenics was about improving and impairing people based on their racial qualities. That's what it was about. And it even cited, Francis Galton, who coined the term, cited physically and or mentally. Physically and or mentally. Think about it. They said we don't want them to look that attractive. We don't want them to be that smart. So can you then look at whites and Jews and say, hey, they must be ideal? No, they're ruled out. Because the other people were sabotaged by their race. So when you look at them, you see someone all white, all Jewish, you come from a long line of people who benefited from the global sabotage of other races. You couldn't be ideal. You're not supposed to lead. It's that simple. What could you possibly do in the realm of universal logic to prove to the righteous person that you deserve to lead after you've dumbed down these other races? And because you dumbed them down for so many generations, no one's supposed to reproduce. Luke 23, I'd love for you to try to respond to Luke 23. It said, blessed are the childless women, the breasts that never nursed and the wombs that never bore. Are you supposed to keep sabotaging the other races, playing dumb, or in a half-hearted way try to stop them from sabotaging, or play the game so you don't get sabotaged, and throw them a little bone while they're sabotaged and keep reproducing, so then one day your offspring are like, hey, guys, we're right with God. And it's a shame what happened to them. That is not justice, and you know it. Search your hearts and your souls. Is that justice? No. Will God honor that process? No. Will they get punished for it? Yes. There's no other way to look at it. Can you imagine these politically correct idiots saying, well, that's racist. They think that they should be able to sabotage people in a calculated manner or not do enough to stop it. Proverbs 18:9, one who's slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. One who's slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. Whoever doesn't gather with me scatters. When you gather with the eugenicists and their churches, which is every church, every mosque, every synagogue, you're gathering with the devil. The God of this world invested like everything, so to speak, into eugenics. So when you do not scramble to oppose it, when you do not scramble to remove yourself from the guilt of it, okay, fools mock and make an amends for sin. When you do not scramble to do what is right in regards to eugenics, you are a demon, an abomination, and a fool, to say the least. Pretty straightforward. So it says in Deuteronomy 8, if they don't do the work of God, they will be destroyed. And we'll get to that in Deuteronomy 11 or so. Okay, this is a recurring theme. So when people read the Old Testament and they say, what is it saying here? It's not saying that Jews can do whatever they want every generation, and whoever's left will magically be blessed, and the spirits of those who were screened out will magically be resurrected and be among them. Say, yay, and they'll have some kind of supercomputers or some kind of techno. Yay, this is paradise. That's not what it's saying. That's the devil's argument in their own Judeo-Western culture, where the devil says the mind is a place of its own, like the mind hooked to a machine, remotely or otherwise, whether or not it knows it's hooked to that machine. That's the devil's argument. That's the devil's idea of paradise. That's their Elysian fields, their checkerboard, illusion, Freemasonry, psychology fields of Satanism and Luciferianism. And when those people die, people like me trample their souls ruthlessly. Like, how dare you steal the planet from the righteous and then call it paradise, you monster, you monster, you monster. How dare you reproduce in the spirit of eugenics, in the spirit of rebellion against God? How dare you pretend to be chosen? You're of the synagogue of Satan, of the mind is a place of its own versus actual justice. God is known by justice. That's why Abraham in the story, he knew he was talking to God in the story. If you interpret it in terms of God and the story is God, there's many ways to interpret it, but all have to be within the boundaries of what's fair and just and right. He knew it was God because what God was saying to him was morally precise. So we know what God's judgment is and what group to follow, depending on whether their fruit, their ways, their paths, their motives, their hearts, their fruit is morally precise or not. These worms want to sit there twiddling their thumb while the most righteous person that ever lived and ever will live is persecuted, and then say, okay, he's God now, and we feel bad, but we're healed because we're not jealous of him anymore. And that had to be done, guys. You guys saw it, right, guys? Like some kind of a sniveling female dog, like some kind of a coward, completely fleeing from their responsibility like they fled from Goliath like a punk. That's why David faced Goliath, was made king. Worms fled from. They fled from into the hands of Satan. And then David said, it's okay, I struck him down, stop being a sniveling worm, and come join me. Those fair weather worms who refuse to carry their cross, they're screened out. They go to hell. They failed. They're a disgrace, a disgrace, a disgrace. And if you feel like them when you hear this and not like me, then not only you're a disgrace because you're not following me right now, right? But you're a disgrace and a disgrace, if you get what I'm saying. Thank you.